And you said you want to talk about mutual funds taking your Series 6, right?
Yes.
Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll send you a copy of these slides after this evening
Oh,
so you
perfect.
can, not worry about, trying to take snippets or whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so I thought what we do is the highest risk things we can in your 30 minutes, which is about mutual funds. And one of those very important things is what's called the net asset value.
Mhm.
And, I don't know where you at, Jessica, in your study effort. Are you?
So I just passed my SIE last Thursday and I started studying this week. So I'm
Oh, okay.
really,
Well, there's some overlap. So
yeah.
if I ask you a rhetorical question, I'm just kind of poking around in your brain housing group.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't matter if you don't know it this evening. What would matter is by testing, right?
Yeah.
So under the Investment Company Act of 1940, our first test question, how often does a mutual fund have to calculate its NAV?
Every day, at the end of every day.
Yeah, every business day.
What does it say?
So you say, hey, Dean, I'm going to invest $20,000. How many shares am I going to get? And I said, well, I don't know, Jessica. What do you mean you don't know? And I said, well, Jessica, we're not always doing business based on the next calculation of the NAV. You say, Dean, if I redeem, how many shares am I going to get? I said, I don't know. It's always based on the next calculation of the NAV. What is this idea called? Test question number 2 in our 30 minutes. What is this idea called? The idea that we're always doing business with customers based on the next calculation of the NAV.
Price. Yeah.
Forward price.
I just saw that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like learning a foreign language. They say when you dream the foreign language, that's when you know it.
Yeah.
So I guess when you have your first Series 6 dream, you go, all right, man, I'm on track. And I think you were correct to say, we typically do it at the end of the market close. When the market closes, that's when we typically do that.
Mhm.
So what is the NAV? The net asset value of fund. We're going to do this per share, but it's the total assets. What that is the portfolio of securities minus the liabilities equals the NAV. And then we divide that by how many shares we have outstanding, and that would give us the NAV per share.
Okay.
So here's very much an example. Now, the math calculation. So, one of the styles of questions you get are recognition, something you simply know or you don't know,
Mhm.
and you can't be giving up recognition questions. And then there are questions that I call practical application questions. And those are math questions.
Mhm.
And, even if you're like me, I hate math, but, you got to be able to do the math because there's no interpretation of the answer here.
Yep.
So there's a couple math scenarios we're going to be discussing in our 30 minutes. I might be over ambitious in what we can accomplish in 30 minutes, but I'm going to be pretty aggressive.
Okay.
And so I'm not worried about us being able to calculate this. I'm interested in when we talk about it that you kind of understand generally how it works.
Mhm.
And then we're going to talk about some math I do want us to be able to do as a matter of routine. We're going to be looking at a situation where we're given the NAV and the public offering price, and we're going to calculate the percentage sales charge, knowing, Jessica, that we better not come up with more than 8.5% or somebody's in trouble.
Yes.
Right? The other scenario that's going to show up that I want us to be able to mathematically do is when given the NAV and the percentage sales charge, because some people are going to qualify for a lower sales charge.
Mhm.
You know, I like Costco. One of the reasons I like Costco is it has quantity discounts.
Yes.
Man, I don't need 2 tons of salsa, but God, it's so cheap.
Yeah.
So, we have quantity discounts in mutual funds as well. And those are called breakpoints.
Yes.
And breakpoints are good. Breakpoint sales are bad.
Mhm.
Breakpoints are good. That's a quantity discount. So the other scenario that might show up on our exam is that we qualify for a reduced sales charge. And then what we want to be able to do is calculate the public offering price based on that percentage sales charge. So when given the NAV and the sales charge, calculate the public offering price. I'm going to show you both of those.
Okay.
And the last math thing I was hoping to get done in our 30-minute coaching call tonight is be able to do an example of dollar cost averaging.
Okay.
What makes it work and what's the end result, and what can you say about it? So as I say here, total assets of this mutual fund is $110,000, right? The
Mhm.
liabilities are 10 grand, So assets minus liabilities. We have net asset value here of 100 million. And we have 10 million shares outstanding, so the NAV is 10. I don't care that you can calculate it as a test taker, but what I want you to take away from this is that people investing the fund or putting money into the fund doesn't change the NAV. In your mind, what I want you to kind of lock into your brain housing group is the only thing that makes this thing go up or down is the portfolio of securities.
Okay.
So it's the securities going up and down that are going to cause the NAV to go up and down. So I'm illustrating this to you. I did, again, this is math. I'm not worried if you can do or can't do. But here's an example of somebody who invests another $10,000 into the fund.
Okay.
Right. So, $100,000 into the fund. And your money goes into the fund at the NAV because the load comes out of the top, right? So be careful. The load is not paid by the fund. The load is paid by the customer. So your money's going to the fund after the sales charge at the NAV. And so this person invested 100,000, and please note, the money went up, the amount of money went up, but so did the share count. And so it's a wash. The NAV did not change as a result of that additional subscriptions. Same deal when somebody redeems. Again, here's somebody who's redeeming. And again, all I care about is that you understand that additional investments into the fund and withdrawals from the fund do not change NAV.
Okay.
What changes the NAV is the portfolio of securities going up or down.
Okay.
Right. So here's another example where somebody says, hey, Dean, redeem. Now, that's another very important concept here. You're doing business directly with the fund. Right? Open-end funds do not trade in a secondary market.
Yep.
Right? You're doing business with the fund. So here's an example again. Again, math isn't important. But if we cancel or redeem 10,000 shares at 10, and I send that $100,000 to the former mutual fund shareholder, please note the share count went down, and so did the money.
Mm-hmm.
The NAV remains unchanged when people put in new money or when they withdraw. It doesn't affect the NAV. Okay. What affects the NAV is the portfolio of securities going up or going down. Okay, so fees and sales charges. You know, that you're not paying a fee to buy a mutual fund, right? What you're paying is a sales charge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you're paying, is that sales charge. Under the Investment Company Act of 1940, the maximum sales charge test question is 8.5%. I don't know, Jessica, of any fund left that still charges 8.5%, but you know,
And then question, when they do have the 8.5, they have to have the two things, the break points.
That's exactly right. You know, the technical name for this is called a full service fund.
Okay.
And if you're charging somebody 8.5%, you got to show them a lot of love.
Yeah.
You know, usually it varies from fund to fund as stipulated in the prospectus, but not if you're charging somebody 8.5%, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know if many funds anymore are charging 8.25%, 8.25%, or 6.25%, excuse me. That's called scaled down. Even that's kind of, you know, kind of on the high side.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have various types of funds,
Yeah.
right? And so this ties into suitability.
Mm-hmm.
And the A shares are going to be suitable for somebody who has a large amount to invest and is long-term.
Okay.
Put that here. Let's get a different color. Let's get a smaller font. Large dollars to invest
Long-term.
and long-term. And this is typically where we would define the A share to have what's called, very testable, a breakpoint. Okay. You know, as we said, breakpoints are good. Yeah, that's good. I'll just make up a breakpoint. So I started my career as a retail stockbroker and ended up more of an institutional guy. But back in the day, Jessica, when I sold mutual funds to the public, I used to sell a lot of tax-free funds. Mm. And the fund I used to do a lot of business with would say, if you invest $1 to 99,000, you're going to pay 4%. And if you invest 100,000 or more, you're going to pay 3%. And so that would be the break point. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, maybe in this example, You say, Dean, how much should I invest? I say, Jessica, you should invest $99,999. And you say, why? I said, because I'll make a $4,000 commission. And if you give me another buck, I'm only going to make a $3,000 commission. Am I A, a full service broker, or am I B, violating the code of conduct?
Violation.
Yeah, the code of conduct is the ethical behavior that we owe customers and others. So whether a customer can articulate it or not, ask them about the code of conduct. They don't follow it here. Now that, somebody's going to come out and say, gee, Jessica, what's the problem? So that would be called very testable a breakpoint sale. So breakpoints are good, but breakpoint sales are bad. That's when I'm trying to maximize my commission by avoiding that breakpoint. And so maybe you say, well, Dean, geez, that $100,000 deal sounds pretty good. The easiest way to stay out of trouble, by the way, is to tell somebody how they get the reduced sales charge. Right? I wish other businesses were like ours, Jessica. Sometimes I'll say, is there any deal I don't know about? And the person will look at me kind of strange and say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, in my business, I have to tell people how to get the best deal. I was at a hotel, for example, and I said, listen, I've been seeing people check out of here, and what they're paying is all over the place. I mean, some people are paying 3, 4, 100, and they said, well, Dean, are you here on business or leisure? And I said, well, you tell me what the, deals are, and I'll tell you why I'm here. He said, if you're business, it's 300, leisure is 150. I go, well, leisure it is. So let's say that in this example, I'm working with you, this hypothetical. You say, Dean, I think that's wonderful, but really, what can I tell you? I just don't have for my initial investment 100. All I have for my initial investment is $80,000. And I said, well, gee, it looks like with $80,000, you're going to pay in this example, by the way, these are called exhibits. So this is an example I'm making up. So who knows what the exhibit or example you'll see on your exam. But in general, it kind of works this way, right? So you say, Dean, all I have for my initial investment is 80. I say, very testable. I said, Jessica, do you think over the next 13 months, you might be able to come up with an additional $20,000? Because if so, what we should do is fill out a
letter of intent.
Yeah, letter of intent. And again, these are associated with the A shares.
Okay. Only A shares?
Yeah, just we associate breakpoints and LOIs and with what we call front end load A shares. So I don't think it's a big testable distinction, but this is where you're usually going to be dealing with this kind of a thing. So you say, well, gee, Dean, that's wonderful. I wish I could come up with that, but I'm not. And so, why waste our time? And I say, well, okay, I kind of get that, but I mean, gee, Jessica, you should know that you can't get hurt by filling out the letter of intent. It's a unilateral contract. It's only binding on you. And so, if you get to reduce sales charge in this example of 3%, you'd be able to buy additional fund shares. That would be wonderful. And we're just going to escrow those shares and put them in an escrow account. And if you don't fulfill it, we'll back flag the account. It'll look exactly like it would have looked. He said, well, gee, what can I tell you, Dean? It still makes no sense. I said, okay, I'll document that. And then you call me 30 days later, you say, damn, Dean, I should have done it. I just won the lottery. I said, well, Jessica, good news. We can backdate this for 90 days. And that 90 days is inclusive of the 13 months. So if you wait 90 days, you only got 10 months left to get this done. You say, hey, Dean, can I pull my purchases for purposes of meeting the breakpoint? I say, sure. I mean, some funds will let you pull purchases and combination privileges. And there's only one persons that aren't going to be allowed to pull their purchases for purposes of meeting a breakpoint. Do you know the one persons we're not going to allow to pull their purchases?
Investment club.
Yeah, pretty good. Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, so that's our traditional kind of an A share. And, we're supposed to be making a recommendation on the share class that is best for my customer, right? What's in my customer's best interest? What the FINRA is really worried about is misuse of no load terminology. So, if you have a smaller amount to invest, but you think you're going to be investing long term, you might want to consider a B share. And a B share has a contingent deferred sales charge. And the test issue is that we don't misrepresent that as being no load.
Okay.
This has kind of an exit fee that declines the longer you hold the fund. So, it's kind of like if I said, hey, you come into my nightclub, I say, Jessica, no cover charge, free valet parking. And then you go to get your car and I say, there's a $40 exit fee.
Oh,
You said, well, Dean, you said there was no cover. I said, there's not. It's an exit fee. Whether I charge you getting into the fund or coming out of the fund, that is still a sales charge and needs to be described as such. Now, this makes sense again for somebody who has a smaller amount to invest, but plans on being long-term, because if they're in the fund, it's typically 5 years, not testable. That goes poof. It goes poof. And it's going to have a higher expense ratio because typically they're going to be paying the promotional expense to the brokers. And then our C share is going to be not good for somebody who's long-term.
sure.
Because that 12B1 fee, a 12B1 fee is a promotional expense paid by the fund, a promotional expense. And, if that 12B1 fee you're paying, I'll just make up a number. If you're paying that, I'll say 1% is kind of the max you can charge over the life. And so the point is, in my example I shared with you in the A share, Jessica, we were charging you 4% once and then you were done. So if I'm charging you 1% every year after that, fifth or sixth or seventh year, you would have been better served to get into the A share. This is so confusing, by the way, that most mutual fund families don't offer B and C and D shares anymore just because it became such a mess. Well, let's go back to the traditional A share where it's pretty straightforward how it works. Now, no load funds can have a promotional expense. And if they want, they can have up to a 0.25% 12B1 fee. That's a promotional expense again, and still refer to their fund or hold their fund out to the public as a no load fund. Now, to implement that promotional expense, you're going to have a majority vote of the board of directors, a majority vote of the shares, and a majority vote of the disinterested board members. And what no load means, remember, is that the NAV plus 0 equals the public offering price. Right. So, and a no load fund, the way we would recognize this is if I say it's $9.15 is the NAV, and I tell you the public offering price is $9.15, right? That's got to be a no load fund because the NAV plus the sales charge equals the public offering price. And in this example, there is no sales charge. So, okay, so I told you what I wanted to try and accomplish here in our time together is I wanted to try and get some math done.
Yes.
Just to give you some working models. And, what I want you to be able to do it before you test is at some point be able to get the math and just say, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this number and I'm going to manipulate this number. And that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
So the first math I want to share with you is this, the first scenario I gave you is when given the NAV and the POP, determine the percentage sales charge. And remember, there's going to be a couple red flags. One red flag is anything over an 8.5% can't be an open-end fund.
Okay.
Because that's the max. So I might be a closed-end fund, for example. There's no way there's a negative sales charge, right? So it's got to be NAV plus something, right? So here's that formula that we use. So here's an example of a fund, and we have the public offering price of 10 and the NAV of 950. So the first thing we need to find out is what is the sales charge? In this example, 50 cents. And then what we're going to do is divide that by the public offering price. And you would tell me on the exam that this has a 5% sales charge. Right. So the way you do this is you take the POP minus the NAV and you divide by the POP to determine the percentage sales charge. Right. So when you're doing this, I had a guy, he wasn't being, I don't think he didn't have hubris. What I mean by that, he was kind of, I'm making him sound like he was bragging and he wasn't. He said, Dean, you don't need to go over any formulas with me. You know, I'm a math guy. You give me two numbers, I can solve for the third. And I said, okay, cool. Anyways, he called me. Good news, he passed. He said, Dean, I kind of got mixed up here because they didn't ask me to do the math. They asked me to recognize the math, and I didn't recognize it because I, make it up as I go. He
Yeah.
said, I was able to kind of reverse engineer it. Now, as I told you, the other scenario that's going to show up on your test is
Middle.
determining the public offering price, giving the percentage sales charge.
Okay.
Right. So I say your client is contemplating buying a mutual fund with an NAV of $9.50 and a 5% load. What is the public offering price? The way we do that is we take the NAV and divide by 100% minus the sales charge. Now, one thing I would tell you, Jessica, if on an exam you can't decide what math to do, divide.
Okay.
I'd be doing you a favor to cover every key on your calculator except the divide key. And if you can't decide what to divide on the exam, take the first number, divide it by the second number. That takes care of about 90% of the math, right? So those are two testable scenarios. And so you tell me the public offering price is $10. All right, so let's try some here. Let's try some. So I'm going to get out my calculator. I'm terrible at arithmetic. So I'm going to take here the public offering price, $10, minus the NAV 950. I've now established the sales charge is 5%.
Okay. Yeah.
And now I'm going to take that 50 cents, divide by the public offering price, boom, and we find out that that's 5%.
Okay. Okay.
All right, let's try the next one. So the next one, we're going to take the 22.92. We're going to minus the $22. And I get a sales charge of 92 cents. By the way, I feel embarrassed. Yes, Dean used his calculator. I know people watching the replay are going to say, oh, that's so embarrassing. That guy can't take $22 from 22.92. But I told you, I'm using my calculator. So now I got my 92 cents.
Yeah, 4%.
There you go. Excellent. Oh, you're way ahead of me. That's, there you go. All right, our last one. So our last one is we're going to take 124.59. We're going to minus 114. Let's see if you beat me again. You're probably going to beat me again.
8.4.
Oh, man. Okay, you beat me. By the way, that is the maximum sales charge. So that, that you should kind of notice and say, whoa, that is the legal limit right there. If we went past that, it would have to be a closed-end fund.
Okay.
So here we go, calculating again the public offering price when given this. And as we said, we take the NAV and we divide by 100% minus the sales charge. The way I think of it is not testable, but I think of it, well, gee, if you're investing $1 and I'm taking 5 cents of every dollar, only 95 cents or 95% is actually going in the fund, is the way I think about it. But anyways, we got to be able to come up with $10 there. And so here's our pop. And now we're just going the other way. I wouldn't worry about this one at all on your exam. All right, I told you the last math I wanted to try and get done in our 30-minute coaching call is dollar cost averaging. And there are 3 test questions about dollar cost averaging. One is, what makes this work? And so to make this work, we got to get a customer to agree to give us fixed dollars invested regularly. So like $100 a month. I would tell you it's, again, what Dean thinks is not testable, but more people get where they're going without crashing and burning and dollar cost averaging a mutual fund than any other thing they could possibly do. I always, when I'm teaching 7, say, listen, if you go back to your manager and say, hey, I have a series 7, but it is okay if I just sell mutual funds, your manager would say, oh, that would be so wonderful. About 90% of what we need to be able to do can be done in the context of a mutual fund. The second test question is, what's the end result? You're going to end up with a lower average cost than the underlying shares. That's kind of cool because you're doing exactly what you should be doing, which is buying more shares when they're low and less shares when they're high. Yeah. And the underlying shares, I'll illustrate that to you in just a sec. And then the third thing is, it doesn't guarantee a profit. There are 2 nasty words we never use in the securities industry. And those are the words guarantee and approve. We never say anything is guaranteed, and we don't say anything is approved. You want to hear the word guarantee, you need to talk to a banker about a banking product or an insurance agent about insurance products. And then you can use that word guarantee. So let's just go through here these months here. So in January, the customer gave me $600 and the share price was $20. So you got 30 shares. In February, gave me $600 and the shares went up. And so you did the smart thing. You automatically cut back on your purchases. It's kind of like going to the grocery store, right? If they kept marking up the prices, you'd probably cut back a little bit. And when they're on sale, my mom is not, I take care of mom. She's retired. She's not in the house right now. So I can tell you this. Jessica, oh my goodness. Every time she comes back from the grocery store, she's complaining to me, which is fun. Listen, we're blessed. So I don't know why she's so frustrated that, eggs or whatever eggs are.
Oh yeah.
but
Oh my gosh.
I let her, I'm like, Mom, I don't understand why it's a big deal. Get whatever you need, So anyways, here's $600, 30. Again, we cut back on our purchases. And then 40. So as you can see here, as it gets higher and higher, we're cutting back. So now we have invested $2,400. And if we take our 114 and we divide by 4, we find out the average share price was $28.50. And but you spent $2,400 and you got 90 shares. And so your average cost was $26.66. How cool, right? So that's what we said, why this is so cool is because you'll end up with a lower average cost than those of the underlying shares, right? So this is the last math I'd be able to do on the test. I'd be able to take this exhibit. These are called exhibits. We want to embrace exhibit questions because we know the answers there. We just got to find it, right? So, when you get it, you take a strategic pause, say, okay, I know I can figure this out. And so what we want to be able to do is figure out the average share price. And so we take 20 plus 24 plus 30 plus 40, 114 divide by 4, right? Then give us an average share price. Then we take the $2,400 divide by the 90 shares. We had to subtotal that. And then I told you the end result is testable. And remember, the end result is that we have a lower average cost than those in the underlying shares. Now, kind of a test taking trick, using dollar cost averaging, you should know the average cost can end up being lower. So, you could shop the answer set, so to speak. All right. Well, hey, we did exactly what I thought we could do in 30 minutes on the coaching call. So as the winner of the inaugural coaching call, kudos. And then remember, tomorrow, Jessica, I'll send you a copy of this. I'll send you the whole thing. So we didn't get all these slides, but at least you'll have another resource. Who's your vendor?
TD Banker.
Oh, then for sure, I want to send you the document tomorrow. So what I'm going to send you is what I call my class notebook that I use when I'm teaching Series 6. So it'll be all the slides that you would have encountered in a 3-day class with me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else on your agenda?
Oh, yeah.
Well, make a list. Maybe win again or show up.
I know. I was so happy. I never win anything. And I was like,
So just keep your list. And like I say, if it's not you don't want another coaching call, just when you're in the live stream, just put it in the chat and we'll take care of it for you.
Oh, awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you later. Keep me posted.
Bye.
It's not a transaction, it's a relationship. So now I want to know what's happening with you. When's your test date?
20th. I think it's Thursday.
Okay. Oh, okay. Coming up. So
no, I think
that's
I'm nervous. But I'm like, I got it.
And then you know where to find me if you need me.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night.